Yeah. How many do you have? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So I'm here, and I'm joined by all of my friends, except one of my friends who couldn't be here. And we're going to be doing the finale of the fantasy movie leagues for this year. We will do next year's. We don't start these till February because I need time to ramp it up. I've actually fixed all the the technical problems that happened for the first time, and we've also got some new people coming. So it's going to be very, very smooth now because I've actually solved the formula, because I've cut out some stuff, and Michael turned out to be right about a few things, including the award season stuff, which I was very naive to assume or to think that I could include all that stuff. So there have been some changes to the formula, but this was the test year anyway, so that's kind of how it goes. And the other good thing is the winner was never in doubt by anyone, I don't think. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Tell everyone where they can find you.
Hey, I'm Michael from the Star Wars Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Star Wars Pod or any podcasting applications that you may use. And we talk about Marvel and Star Wars stuff. So
you do. And you have a great podcast. Love it. Next, Zach, do you want to go?
Sure, I'm Zach from the Nerd Dose Podcast. Likewise, you can find us anywhere on Spotify, maybe Apple iTunes, Instagram, etc.
Morgan?
What's going on, everybody? Morgan Cobbs. I'm the host of the Cobbs Corner Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Cobbs_corner_podcast. And we are on all podcast listening platforms. Cobbs Corner, we are the one-stop shop for all things TV, film, and pop culture.
And by the way, I don't think I told you this last time because I don't think I had the numbers, but the podcast we did last year with Michael B. Jordan, like that Michael B. Jordan podcast, is one of our most listened to of the year on Spotify. So, I know. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. I was looking at the numbers and I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, the Ant-Man and the Wasp episode, that was not the most listened to. Actually, I think my most listened to episode for last year was the Count of Monte Cristo. So go check that out. But yeah. So
yeah, you whenever you come on my podcast, everyone just loves to listen to you. So that's a good thing. Now, this was a very turbulent year because I made a statement, which if I edit this will have appeared at the beginning of before I start talking right now, where I made this claim. It was a very bold claim. And it was that I was going to destroy all of you in this game I created. That was the claim I made. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I made this declaration. I was like, I made a game and I'm going to beat all of you in my game. Unfortunately, I did not win my game. I will tell you that. And, it really, really hurt me. I was trying to, I was like, is there any way I can do this? And it just turns out there's no way I could possibly rig it into me winning. I made some very poor decisions. I put too much belief in Disney to have their worst year ever. So that really, really screwed me up. I think we all, put a little bit too much faith in Disney and some other big studios being able to do some stuff.
I think you're projecting a little bit because I think you were the one to do that. And now you're saying we all did that.
I think the Marvels are going to make $1 billion? Absolutely. Did I think the Hunger Games was going to make $1 billion? Absolutely. Did I think Guardians was going to make $1 billion? Absolutely. Did I think that everything Disney put out would make $1 billion? Absolutely. Was I wrong? Absolutely. So, the Marvels really just stuck it a little bit in the heart. And same the Hunger Games. But, it turns out there were $2 billion movies and one person had both. So with that being said, the winner of this game I created, okay? It was Michael with 616 points. It really wasn't close for the number one. And it was unfortunate, And I will tell you something though.
Wait. Wasn't his the $1 billion movie his fifth pick as well, or his fourth or fifth pick?
So I'll tell you his first
Where's
pick.
Mario Bros?
his first pick was.
I know what my first pick was.
It was Barbie.
No, I think it was it. I believe it was Mario.
So. It might be Mario. It was
because
one of
I was
those
joking about picking Mario so much, and then everybody took my picks, and then I actually picked Mario.
Yeah, you had Mario, you had Barbie, you had Elementals, you had John Wick 4. And again, when I edit this, all the things will be on the screen, so I don't have to say this. But you had John Wick 4, you had Fast and Furious 10, you had Evil Dead Rise and Asteroid City. By the way, those two were your worst picks, and they both did decently well. So I don't really know. Look, I don't really know what to say. You were the only person to have 2 over 100 points for a single movie, like 2 movies that had more than 100 points. So yeah, it was a good run while it lasted.
Here's the next.
In second place, don't worry, I'm coming for the crown. I'm coming for the crown. There's no way. Look, so when I was going back, by the way, I know it's a little bit of a side note here, but when I was going back, right, and I was going through all of the movies that we picked, and I was sitting there, I was like, how did we let this man get every single success? Like the 2 biggest IPs, Barbie and Mario, we just let him take. How did we do that collectively?
I know how you did it, and it was believing in Disney.
I didn't believe in them. But, how did the rest of you not do something?
Dude, at that time, we didn't even have a Barbie trailer. I think it was just maybe a poster at the point.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I just used my bias with the information that we had this time last year. It's a lot of the movies that ended up doing great. It's we didn't have a ton of information at the start of the year, and then it's as the year progressed, it's oh, that movie actually did well. Oh nope, I should have chosen whether it was Blue Beetle or whatever the movie was. It's so. I think for me it was just recency bias. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was unfortunate. And now there were also a few negative scores that really hurt people. What I will say, I kind of got screwed over by the fact that I don't like reading numbers, and I chose a movie which I should have known was going to suck or fail miserably, which was Blood and Honey. Really hurt me, in the long run. I also chose The Marvels. Oh, by the way, I should probably say this. I did come in second. I was closer to the bottom than I was to the top, though. So, I ended up with 390 points. So, if you want, that's the disparity between first and second: 616 to 390. So
what was third?
Third. So in third was the one person who didn't show up because he lives too far away, and Lights Camera Rent had 303. So again, it was not that far apart. And then Zach came in fourth and Morgan came in fifth. Zach had 235 and Morgan had 220. So again, it all got close toward the end, right? All of us, everyone outside of Michael was bunched up within 100 points of each other, which is one movie doing well, right? 100 points is one movie just being Spider-Verse was 100 points, or it was 118 or something. But
can you run through our picks real quick?
I will run through our picks. Yes, I will.
Just for the audience sakes.
Yes. I mean, the pictures will be up on the screen for them, but I will run. So, and the other thing was no one actually dropped any of their movies except for Morgan. So that also probably, that could have changed some things. Because Zach,
2 of my movies got delayed.
Because you had Dune and Rebel Moon, right? Rebel Moon didn't have any theatrical release. And
I did, yeah.
Dune got delayed. So that was unfortunate. And then I think, yeah, and then there was Lights Camera Rent had Chicken Run 2. So, things which ended up being 0 could have been something. So Lights Camera Rant's team was Oppenheimer, Flash, Aquaman 2, Gran Torino, Indiana Jones, Transformers. Zach's team was Spider-Verse 2, Mission Impossible 7, Scream 6, Dune 2, Rebel Moon, and 65. And then Morgan's team was Knock at the Cabin Door, Trolls 3, Five Nights at Freddy's, Cocaine Bear, Creed 3, Shazam 2, and The Color Purple. So, again, on paper, a lot of these look good. Mission Impossible didn't do very well box office wise. It was a massive disappointment comparatively. I think, I can't speak for you, Zach, but I think you kind of expected Spider-Verse to do a little bit better than it did, box office wise. Morgan, I think you actually probably had, you really did try to make a comeback there by putting in Five Nights at Freddy's, which really did boost you. And made it, that's what made it close, was the Five Nights at Freddy's thing. But I think The Color Purple was unfortunate because it probably made more of its money after the year ended, because all the box office stuff stops the second the year ended, right?
Yeah.
And I think
I was going to say it did come out Christmas.
Yeah, so you had a week with Aquaman, right? So you weren't really anything it done. The biggest thing for you for that one was the critic score, which was high and all that stuff, right? But the box office stuff was not significant. So we got to give Michael his props. He did win. He is the first champion. I was hoping that would be me, but unfortunately, I'm not bitter about it at all, as you can tell. But yes, you do wear the crown.
Can hear the
so, Mike, what do you have to say? You have to make a speech now that you've won.
A speech.
Yeah.
Here, I've heard some conversation back and forth. I've heard the word luck thrown out around a lot. I just want to say,
I said that a lot.
You did say that a lot. I think my best pick in this whole thing was Mario. I think that was one that I was really confident about. You're combining an existing mega billion-dollar property with Illumination, which is already a behemoth in blockbusters. If you didn't see that one coming, honestly, that one's on you guys. Kids movies always destroy. There's always going to be one kids movie a year that's just going to go bonkers at the box office. And I did looking at that was just the one that stood head and shoulders above the rest. That being said, I also had the same thought process with Elementals, which didn't deliver as well. And I think that is just the fall of Pixar a little bit. But yeah, I'm really happy with my choices. And yeah.
Well, Barbie did well too. So.
Yeah, Barbie. I think that there was just a lot of chatter online. Again, I don't know if there was a trailer yet, but it was definitely being hyped. People were talking about it. So actually, you know what it was? I think they didn't have a trailer. Did they come out with
They had some type of casting.
They did casting, but they also released
What is it, January? So the movie was basically done.
There was a social media push at one point. I think that they had that you could go upload yourself and make yourself a Barbie, and everybody was posting it on Instagram. I thought that was an ingenious.
The Barbie box thing. I think that was what it was.
Yeah. So when they started doing that, I was like, and everybody was sharing it. It was everywhere. I was like, you see even major companies on Twitter updating their profile pictures to make it Barbie. I'm like, this thing's gonna be huge. So that was another one that
You know what my thought process, and so this is the thing which I hate, right? The thing I always say about box office is always go with the kids movie, right? Because the kids movies generally makes more money than a non-kids movie would. Now, historically, Marvel's been a very everyone friendly franchise. Again, I swear I'm not salty about this. I know it sounds like that, but I'm not. But yeah, you made some good picks.
I'll be honest. I think Super Mario Bros. Was a big shocker because you're looking at the latest, highest grossing video game movie being, I just looked up the list, Detective Pikachu, which was almost, 450 million at the box office. So almost $1 billion less than Super Mario Bros. So I had no idea that coming. And then you guys say kids movie. I mean, Migration came out. Elemental, there's so
and in hindsight, this all looks so dumb.
There's still 20 other kid movies this year that came out that did terrible at the box office. I think Barbie is a genuine gem because at the time everyone was seeing it. People who haven't gone in the movie, it was like Top Gun essentially. Everyone who wasn't going to the movies, except that 1 or 2 times a year, was going to go see Barbie. And I was there opening day on Thursday. It was packed. I was there 2 weeks later. It was still packed. Everyone was still dressing up. I think it was truly something special for that time of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Barbie was the last movie I saw before I left the U.S. So it's my last movie in theaters for a while. So
I'm going to say something that's going to sound so bitter, and it's going to sound so mean to Barbie and so mean to Oppenheimer, and and I'm gonna get it. I might clip this intentionally to get the hate, but we'll see. I think that Barbie was the biggest fluke of all time, and Oppenheimer, both of them together being the biggest flukes of all time. Neither movie deserved to make or get all the hype that they've gotten. Neither of them. Neither movie deserved to make all the money it's made. The only reason it did was some person and whoever it is, by the way, should get a massive raise, and maybe whatever profits Barbie and Oppenheimer make. But someone went into a marketing office and said, let's combine these two things and let's start this internet trend. And that is the only reason it did as well as it did. Because I tell you, if it wasn't like they both rely, and I know that I see some very disgruntled people right now, I'll tell you, if they released on separate days and there was no kind of combined brand, and Barbie was the first one to push this Barbenheimer nonsense. And I'll tell you, that was the thing which pushed it. I think like it would have been good. It would have been successful. It would not have been this successful or this acclaimed. Because if you go and you remember the critic scores and the reviews kind of before it came out, right? They weren't that great for Barbie. Like they were okay, but and everyone was saying it got 100% Rotten Tomatoes, which is a fake thing because it's okay, it was good. It was better than bad. People were kind of cautiously it's okay. It's got flaws. And then it just all disappeared the second that it had the massive opening weekend. And that's when it just became, and I mean, I'm telling you, I think there was some luck associated with it. I think it came at a very competitive time in the movie year. I think it probably, again, would not have made the money it made had it been a regular year without that.
I see what you're saying, but I see it the opposite. I think Oppenheimer probably benefited from more than Barbie did. I mean, just sure. Walking into the theater, right? There were people there just to see Barbie and not going to see Oppenheimer, and it wasn't really the other way around.
Sure, but I think they both would I think they were both help people who may never have even gone to a theater to watch either movie, right? I think some of them said, "Oh, I'm going to go with my friends, or I'm going to go, or let's go watch this as a family." It became a kind of a thing where they did what Marvel basically has done almost to perfection for the last 10 years, right? Which is make the movie such a big event that you have to go watch it and you have to go watch it right away, right? That is what Barbie became.
I'm going to disagree with you here, Khalil. And the reason behind that is I think Warner Bros. Was taking the biggest risk by having Barbie stuck to the same day as Oppenheimer. I mean, 2 years ago, they lost Christopher Nolan because of the whole tennis situation and them forcing the release of not doing the delay that he had intended for that movie, or at least wanted to. But I think Barbie for sure was taking the biggest risk. Maybe paid off the most potentially, yeah, but I think both of them are genuinely good movies. I don't think either one of them are bad. I think they're both very well deserving as well. I think Barbie has a killer cast. It's hilarious. First of all, it has an awesome director. It's short, it's not 3 hours, and I know at this point we're stuck to an hour having movies. Yeah. We're having movies 3 hours. Every other movie is 3 hours at this point, so it's kind of refreshing not to get one. And then you have Oppenheimer, also a killer cast, amazing director. I mean, I saw Oppenheimer 3 times, all in 70 millimeter each week. I could not stop watching it. So I think you're very wrong. I think both these movies are well deserving. And I want to ask you a question. What do you think what's a movie to you that you think is deserving of its box office?
I think so. When I look at $1 billion movie, right, and that's what Barbie made, so that's the standard we have to hold it to. And when you look at $1 billion movie, it's a movie which, and I, by the way, don't think Avatar's a deserve $1 billion movie as well. So I'll tell you that. And I think that there are a lot of I think when you look at I don't think Barbie's a bad movie. I need to make this very clear here. I don't think Barbie's a bad movie. I don't think Oppenheimer's a bad movie. I didn't enjoy Barbie nearly as much as most people did, but that's fine. It's a different taste, whatever. I did enjoy Oppenheimer. I will say that. What I will say is I think that they're getting a lot more hype than they probably deserve if they were to be released, if this were to be released, let's say next year, right? And it was kind of like a movie. I think it would have done well. I think it would have been decently acclaimed. I don't think it would be given this much almost especially when it came and I think the biggest thing for Barbie, I'll be honest with you, a little bit is my bitterness about the music, because I think the music is so overhyped, and I think the way it's being talked about, like, this is the greatest music that's come out for a movie ever, and you're looking like there's 3 nominated songs for the Golden Globes, and I think kind of like what the cultural shifts that have happened because of Barbie. There's a lot of companies which are very, very happy that it came out right around Halloween, or right before Halloween, a few months before Halloween. Like there was a lot of stuff which just kind of worked out for it. I think, maybe, I don't know. I don't think it was. Yeah.
I just don't think it was luck either, though. They took a risk. It paid off severe. Like, they definitely won. But yeah, I just don't. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, if you're not, this isn't like a Venom or a Captain Marvel or an Aquaman making over $1 billion. Barbie made $1 billion, but Oppenheimer didn't. So I think
Oppenheimer got close.
Yeah, it was close, but I don't think it's bad that Barbie made. If anything, I think that's as good, because at that one point, Warner Bros. Was kind of suffering financially, and I remember 3 years ago there was
they're still suffering financially, but
yeah, they were going to go bankrupt, and so I mean it kind of helped them out potentially to fund the next DC projects moving forward, even though this year was kind of a dud for DC films.
Well, you also have to consider the recognizability of characters like Barbie and even Super Mario Bros. I mean, Super Mario, that was the highest grossing kids movie this year, and it came out on a Wednesday. I mean, I remember I saw that opening day, and I'm the only adult there without kids, and there's a bunch of kids there. I'm like, shouldn't you all be in school? It's 3:00 on a Wednesday. So I mean, you have to consider the recognizability of characters like Mario, who's probably the most recognizable video game character ever. And then also Barbie, who, there's probably parents today, maybe even grandparents who, grew up playing with Barbie dolls, and with the longevity of the Barbie doll as a, toy kind of that's been around for, I don't even know how long. So I think that also plays a factor into it. And then it being rated PG-13. So it's like you can kind of you're bringing in a larger age bracket, larger demographic with a PG-13 movie versus Oppenheimer, which is like a historical drama, which I still haven't seen, by the way. It's a historical drama. It's 3 hours long. I heard that for Killers of the Flower Moon, movie theaters were getting into trouble for pausing the movie halfway through and allowing intermissions. So it's again, every movie is 3 hours long. So you have to consider the runtime. It's kind of the exception to the rule at this point, which I'm still kind of divided on whether or not movies should actually be 3 hours long.
They shouldn't.
So it's a break from the norm, and it's a recognizable character. It's who's heard of J. Robert Oppenheimer? I mean, but
I loved my Oppenheimer action figure when I was a kid. Yeah,
Can I ask you guys another kind of a separate kind of but related question? So, do you think, and I don't know how you guys rank movies that came out this year, but do you believe that either Barbie or Oppenheimer as a movie are a top 3 movie of the year for you?
I wouldn't argue if you said Oppenheimer it wasn't for me, but
were either 5. Of them for you?
No, Barbie wasn't in my top 10, and Oppenheimer was in my top 5.
What about you,
Oppenheimer was my number 1, and Barbie was, I think, within the top 15 at one point. And I would like to also point that movie was very self-aware, and it made jokes at itself that I think most films, especially Warner Bros., doesn't always willingly do. They're not willingly to kind of insult their company a little bit in order to make a laugh out of it, and they were. So,
yeah, I mean, that comment about the Zack Snyder's Justice League had me. Yeah, Barbie's not in my top 3 for 2023. It's more of I guess you could say maybe top 5 or top 10. If I had to rank, my top 3 for 2023 is probably John Wick 4, Creed 3, and Super Mario Bros. That's probably my top 3. And again, I still haven't seen Oppenheimer, but
and so I guess kind of so it's interesting that all of you guys said answers, which is very Oppenheimer I think was higher for everyone here except compared to Barbie. I think that what I was thinking more of was okay, let's look. Creed probably, deserved to make more money than it did. Mission Impossible probably deserved to make more money than it did. Like, you look at all these movies and you're like, well, they're probably better movies. Guardians 3 is probably a better movie than Barbie and Oppenheimer, or at least Barbie. I mean, I think you can make the case. Like, I don't think you could look crazy at someone who's made the case that was a better movie, right? And I just think we're kind of sitting here and we're kind of like, or at least, there are people who are sitting there acting like, well, these are two of the greatest movies ever made. And I'm like, like Oppenheimer, I'll tell you for a fact, there are people who are saying this is the most important movie or the greatest movie and the best movie. Like, this Oppenheimer is the best movie Nolan's ever made. So I mean, I don't think that's.
I think there could be a case. I'm not going to make that argument, but I think there can be a case. I think definitely top 3. But I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Interstellar, so I mean, what else is there?
Interstellar, I fell asleep.
Inception, Dark Knight.
So you know what I heard the other day? I heard someone described Inception as a giant movie trailer, and now I can't get that image out of my head because I'm like, yeah, so many cinematic shots and everything leading up. I was like, yeah,
I have to actually watch Inception.
You're killing me, Morgan.
Yeah, you got
the one thing I will give Nolan credit for, though, and I think is he made people see Robert Downey Jr. as not Iron Man, which I think is probably the single greatest feat a director has accomplished, because we've seen a lot of the ability to make, and I think part of it is because he's in black and white, which I think really does help. Like, I think the second you put color into Robert Downey Jr., you're like, yeah, that's Iron Man. And I think when you kind of look at Oppenheimer, I think the best thing it does, and I think one thing Nolan has done, which again, how many people have tried to do something with, and we got Doolittle to show us how badly it can go. Like, making Robert Downey Jr. someone not only not Iron Man, but put him in a role which is good enough to get him actual awards hype for the first time in his career, is amazing, right? Like, that's something which I do have to give up Nolan a lot of credit for. But again, I mean, maybe it's because I'm not a huge fan of Margot Robbie, and maybe it's because I'm not a huge, I feel like there's a lack of, it was almost like just a normal blockbuster for Barbie, a normal summer blockbuster, which was kind of turned into this, I guess, was kind of blown up even more than it was. Like, Oppenheimer is and it kind of is, although it made a lot more money than something in this position, but is really that typical prestige Oscar bait movie, right? I don't think anyone's going to disagree with the idea that was made with that intention, like most of Nolan's things, right?
No,
Barbie, I'm outside of the director, I'm fairly confident was made as a fun, summer blockbuster, right? That's what it was made as. And I think the problem is when you have these two movies, which both, did very well box office wise, Nolan probably made the best grossing prestige movie ever, because I don't think there's ever been a movie that's made as a prestige movie, which makes a damn near $1 billion. And then Barbie, which, was made to make as much money as possible and ended up being a big prestige movie of the year as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're talking actor noms for Barbie. Like, can we be serious here? Or no?
I was gonna say Oppenheimer is far from being a Oscar bait movie. I'd say if you're looking at something like maybe like Maestro, or even Killers of the Flower, Killers of the Flower Moon. Maybe someone would even throw The Killer in there as well. I think Oppenheimer is far from that type of movie, and I just think that just speaks from Nolan himself and based on how he describes cinema and kind of what he views his movies as. I think his intention was to create, a historical piece and for a modern audience, and I think he achieved it greatly. I mean, I have "Can You Hear My Music" was my #1 song last year from my Spotify Wrapped, so I got it's so addictive. The movie's brilliant, and it does not deserve as much hate as you're giving it, Khalil.
I'm trying not to hate on it. I think there is I think there is an argument to be made here that there, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm hating, because I did enjoy Oppenheimer a lot, and and I do think it was a great movie. But I also think that there is I just feel like we're losing the plot a little bit, right? And I think Barbie, again, I want this to be more of a Barbie conversation than an Oppenheimer conversation, but this, because I think Barbie, when you're talking about, okay, well, how many movies? Again, we're talking about a movie which is now, really in the Oscar hunt, right? And is really looking at significant Oscar ground. And it's like, what are we doing here? This is a summer blockbuster. These aren't movies which, like this is not that kind of movie. We're talking about spin-offs now. Like, are we losing our minds here? Like, it just feels like a summer blockbuster is kind of, being taken too seriously almost.
No, but it was a blockbuster that was good. Like it just
okay.
wasn't. No. Like most
No,
blockbusters,
no.
we're thinking of action movies. Mission Impossible, blockbuster, loved it. Barbie, a movie about a doll, a plastic doll, realizing what's the meaning of life. No one in their right mind would agree that is gonna sell as a box office movie. That's a easily November,
So Barbie
maybe
movie starring
October.
Margot Robbie. It's meant to be it's meant to be a summer blockbuster. You tell me you release a Barbie movie in the summer and you're telling me it's not meant to be starring Margot Robbie. It's not meant to be a blockbuster?
No, she's gonna bring in people. I'm not. Yeah, I would agree for that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely that.
Yeah.
That audience for it. But I just saying, like it's just it's not just a box office movie. It's so much more than what you're kind of entailing
Well, it
it
has
to be.
become that. But
It should. I think it. I would not be surprised, and I think it's even well deserving that it could be nominated for Best Picture. I don't think it should
probably will
win,
be.
but there's 10 movies there, and for the most part, I think even the critics as well as the audience truly enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, like it's a movie.
Again,
Like I was gonna say, like Barbie, like it's a movie that, like to your point, Zach, about like a plastic doll like figuring out the meaning of life. It's like on paper that sounds like it shouldn't work. Like in theory, it's a movie that should not have worked. It should have bombed, and it was like one of the biggest box office movies of the summer. So I feel like because it was just such a shocker, and I think Khalil, that's why we're now talking about spin-offs and why now it's getting Oscar nominations, because it's a movie that should not have worked. And an argument could be made that the same could possibly be said for Super Mario Bros. Given the history of video game films. Okay, Doom, Tomb Raider, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, they all just come out bad. But then Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. And also The Last of Us just breaks the mold, and it just
Wait,
changes.
Are we making the argument Super Mario Bros. Was good, or are we just saying it did well? Because I think
I'm saying I'm saying it did great, but given the track record of video game movies, like it was a shocker, because usually video game movies they come out and then they're just terrible. Or maybe because you have maybe nostalgia for like, oh, I remember playing Tomb Raider on PS1 way back when. It's like, so a movie sounds good in theory and then it doesn't work. And then you have a Super Mario Bros. Movie. It's like it sounds good both in theory and in practice. So it has broken that cycle. It's broken that curse of video game movies coming out bad. And then the same could be said for Barbie. It should not have worked in theory, but it did.
Well, because I was going to make the argument that Sonic was again, although it didn't have the commercial success that Super Mario did, I was going to make the argument that Sonic was the first movie which we said, oh my God, this is a very good, again, did not have the commercial success, various reasons for that. But I was going to say Sonic was the movie, I think, which first broke that mold. Like, I don't think Mario did that. I think Mario, again, time, place type thing, capitalized on it. But I don't think Mario was the first good. And I actually don't, I think Sonic was better than Mario, right? Like, I think Sonic did do what, again, after the whole stuff at the beginning of Sonic, it's like the initial design of the character, did what Mario ended up doing, right? Detective Pikachu is another example of that, right? Which was a movie which turned out good. And I know this is probably an unpopular one, but, I loved Uncharted and Tomb Raider, the new Tomb Raider. I thought those were good movies. Again, not great movies, but I think that, if we're talking about, I don't think Mario was a great, I don't think Mario was like, oh my God, this is the first great video game movie. I think it is the first successful video game movie, which I think are two different conversations, but yeah.
Okay. I completely forgot that there were the Sonic the Hedgehog movies.
Because that Sonic just sticks in my mind as like the first great.
A Sonic could walk, so Super Mario Bros. Could run.
Well said.
Yeah. Even
The
though,
irony.
yeah. Or Sonic could run so Super Mario could drive. I don't know. That might work better.
How's that for some tragic irony?
I mean, Sonic 3 might get boosted by Super Mario now, so we'll see what happens to that, because that they Sonic could end up benefiting because now the stigma. I think the stigma. Do you think the stigma's gone for video game movies now? With The Last of Us, obviously, they're coming up with this. I gotta watch The Last of Us season 1 still, so that's gonna be something I'm gonna have to do now because this cast looks so good for season 2. I'm not gonna give my opinions on why I didn't watch The Last of Us in the first place. But do you think the trend of do you think the stigma around video game movies is broken now or no?
Here's the thing. I think first and foremost, by design, the fact that you're adapting a video game is kind of like a cheap move to begin with. You're already trying to piggyback off the success of a video game franchise, and from the ground up, you're already creatively bankrupt when you're going to that point where you're just wanting to copy another franchise. You're already starting from the bottom. And I realize that argument can be made for books and
Yeah.
TV shows. But also books, it's completely different. First of all, like you're creating, I mean, visually, it's an entirely new frontier. And then as far as TV movies, good, bad, I don't know. There's the Sopranos movie. It did fine because it was the same quality of Sopranos.
I was
right?
going to use it, but yeah. Because it was a book, then it was a TV movie, and then it was a real movie, right?
But my point is, I feel like just on its base, the fact that you're trying to make a movie based on a video game, you're already starting on the back foot, in my opinion. With that being said, it's not impossible to do something great with it. Clearly, I think just the idea alone is typically not a good idea. But for me, even before Last of Us, I was never saying you can never make a good video. It almost feels superstitious at that point, right? I think you just need to have the right creative team, have the right new approach to it. And a lot of times when you're coming in on the ground floor adapting a video game, it's just that stuff is already out the window.
So do you think that I mean, Disney's remaking their own movies now.
It's the same thing in my opinion.
So you think that's the same level of moral bankruptcy as remaking an animated movie into live action as making a video game into a movie? So then I guess my follow-up question, because I'm now genuinely curious, is if you were to say that, then why do they not do well? Because if you do have such a base already for that, then is there not an inherent, you look at the Disney live action remakes, right? They've all done, again, with very few exceptions, extraordinarily well, right? And so then I can understand what you're saying from a level of kind of creative bankruptcy. But if you have video game movies just consistently are just terrible, right? You look, and I think in my mind, the biggest version of that is the Assassin's Creed movie, which is probably the single worst thing I've ever seen being made of something else. I don't know how badly you could butcher something, but that movie certainly tried to max that. And if you look at that, why are they such failures then? Shouldn't they be more successful if there is so much to work with?
I think you have to look at it from more of I guess from an artistic standpoint, it's like when you're doing a film adaptation of a book or of a novel, you have a blueprint to follow, and you can kind of take creative liberties wherever, if it's The Count of Monte Cristo or Catch Me If You Can, it's you have that blueprint to follow, especially if it's based on a true story. Whereas with the video game, you don't really have as concrete of a plan you don't have as concrete of a blueprint to follow when doing a movie based on a video game. Whether it's a movie or even a TV show. And that's why so few of them actually work. I mean, there's exceptions. There's, again, Last of Us, Super Mario Bros. But then also doing a remake, it's with remakes, they always have to justify the remake's existence. They always got to repel away from the original story and kind of make it their own and keep some stuff out. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm literally teaching a class called Originals versus Remakes. But yeah.
Zach, do you have anything to say here? I feel like you have something to say here.
Yeah, it's a little tough for me because I can just kind of piggyback off of what Michael said as well. Books, very different because that's what you're visualizing. Video games, I mean, there already is a story and it's getting visualized. How much more can they expand on it? Somewhat, and then you got shows like Last of Us, who episode 3 some would say best episode of the season, with Nick Offerman, and they're able to expand more than what that kind of story is able to provide for us. Detective Pikachu's, I think, interesting. I think it makes sense that it's the second biggest, most box office movie, because it is something that everyone knows, everyone loves Pokemon, and it decided to go a completely weird, different route that no one was expecting, and people actually had a good time with it. And then, of course, you had Ryan Reynolds attached to it during the Deadpool renaissance at the time. So, like, the movie was like, it made sense. I'm kind of surprised it didn't even get a sequel. But I don't have the biggest. Yeah. I don't have the biggest opinion on video game movies because I just don't play a lot of video games. I also wasn't the biggest fan of The Last of Us either, that came out last year.
I haven't seen this.
Yeah, but I think there's definitely a lot of potential. Even like the Halo show, I know that got a season 2 surprisingly. So enough viewers, so enough people watched it too for Paramount to boost another season, and I guarantee you that show was not cheap. So it's kind of interesting.
I haven't seen the
I think
Halo show.
I think there's definitely a particular audience for video games. I'm just curious to know if they're able to kind of persuade them into the theaters, or if it's just regular moviegoers like ourselves.
It might just be
Wasn't
like,
there a
those,
Twisted
like I
Metal
think,
series?
Yeah.
And I heard people like that too. I think Lee watched
I mean,
it. I think he liked it.
I think narrative movies probably have the biggest. Like, I think when you have a narrative video game, you have the biggest problem making a movie out of it, which is weird because I think like you look at, again, when you're trying to follow the narrative, like you look at Tomb Raider, right, which is probably the best example of this, or Uncharted actually would be another great example, right? When you're trying to follow a narrative, I think a lot of it just ends up being so weird and almost lazy because it feels like you're just taking what is meant to be a video game. But like when you look at them, and again, I had problems with the Mario movie. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I have a very anti Chris Pratt agenda, so that was fueled my feelings toward this movie to some extent. But I think that when you look at a movie like Mario, which did do something completely different, like it had a whole justification for the way it was, right? Which took the premise of Mario versus Bowser, right? But like it wasn't really based on any, at least that I'm aware of, any real story of Mario, right? So it was kind of just its own story with those characters, right? And funny, to some extent, obviously, it's the same kind of thing with Barbie, right? As Barbie was, not really based on any Barbie story. It was really just a bunch of using the characters to tell your own story, right? Almost like you're playing with dolls, right? Or you're playing with these things. You're just saying, here's some characters. I'm just going to tell my own story with these characters rather than trying to copy a story which already exists, right? Which Tomb Raider obviously tries to do, which Uncharted tried to do. And I think you kind of just fall into some, because like video game writing is not always the best. I don't know if that's a hot take, but some video game stories are just not immaculately written because they're not meant to be, and very often you're not playing a video game for the depth and the intricacies of the story. You're playing them for the part where you get to click the buttons on the controller or whatever, right? So I think that when you're trying to follow that story and you're not making that many changes, you kind of scratch your head a little saying, okay, I don't know. But when you do something like what Mario did, right, where you're kind of like, let's tell our own story. We're going to have writers write this instead of like movie writers write this instead of video game writers, then you get a little bit of a more coherent story with character development and, a little bit more linear storytelling, which is not always true with video games. I don't know. That was my opinion on that. But
I think, like Guillermo del Toro describes, what is it, animation? Video game is it's a medium to tell a story. And I think it's never going to end with studios trying to recreate them into a TV adaptation or a movie adaptation. But I do applaud those that are trying to, try to do something a little bit different. Like you, Khalil, I was kind of a fan of the Uncharted from Sony. I liked it. I didn't think it was terrible. But then The Last of Us wasn't the biggest fan. But then you got something like Twisted Metal, a show that did, I think, fairly well overall, but no one really cared to watch it. So it's an interesting route.
And Five Nights at Freddy's, by the way, that's a video game movie. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, that was a terror. I hated that movie.
I haven't seen it,
I
but that was a
still
movie
haven't watched
that was another movie which did really well. I don't know where that is on the all-time video game
Yeah, I
box
forgot
office
about
list,
that
but
one. You just
I still haven't watched
probably-
memory.
But it's probably, again, that was something which did really well as getting a sequel. Like, I think that's another one which, again, I haven't seen it. What I've heard from people who are fans of the game said it didn't really do what the video games did. It just kind of told its own story with the characters, right? And with the kind of
I think it's bad
concept.
regardless. I mean, I was a fan of the game. I didn't play the game. I was a movie watcher. It was bad both ways.
Just bad all the way
I don't
around.
think nothing was
take your
really
word for
worth
No
saving,
redeeming qualities.
No.
Like I literally saw a video on TikTok, and it was like what gamers wanted the Five Nights at Freddy's movie to be, and you're just switching from camera to camera to camera to camera. It's like that's what they wanted the movie to be, like literally, because that's what the video game is. It's like a POV. It's like you just like switching from room to room. It's like adapting that into a screenplay. It's like,
I mean, the whole story of it being in the game is, it's you're in one room the whole time. You're changing screens, and I mean, I'm not asking for a lot. I just needed one scene of that somewhere in the movie, and we couldn't even get that. So it's very interesting to kind of see where these type of stories go. I want to see if we can maybe even adjust the conversation and maybe transition to some movies that were surprising how bad they did. I mean, I know last year, Khalil, you had mentioned, and this stuck with me. You mentioned that the Hunger Games was nostalgia to someone like you at the time. And that did really bad at the box. It did not do great, even though I think the movie was. I thought that I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was decent.
I haven't seen it, so I'll be straight up. I haven't seen it.
And then it's interesting to see the course of Ant-Man being,
But that was just a bad movie.
Yeah, it wasn't a great movie, but it did decent enough at the box office. I think it still made around
the Marvel's
400.
bombing was weird.
Yeah, and then it burned. But then a month and a half later, you got 2 to 3 months later, you have Guardians of the Galaxy almost breaking $1 billion, and then you have the Marvels not doing well either, and then you have something like Aquaman that came out 3 weeks.
I mean,
ago.
I don't think
first Aquaman made $1 billion. So why couldn't this one even break 300?
What I will say for Aquaman though, and I think I might have said this when making fun of Morgan to some extent, joking like, that he was going to pick all the DC movies. And I'm pretty sure I was like, no one cares about DC anymore because everyone's looking forward, right? And you've seen like every time, and I'll tell you, this happened with Marvel, right? Marvel announced, I don't remember, was it Civil War or something? And they announced something. And then there's I think 2 movies before that, which just did not do as well as they expected. The timeline right now in my mind is probably off, but Marvel did that where they announced something big. They, 2 or 3 movies out. Those 2 movies did worse than expected because everyone just kept looking forward, right? And that's why Marvel stopped announcing things, which would affect their box office, right? Like that's why they've kind of, they wait till they kind of a break in movies till your movies end. Then they kind of announce something, right? Or they kind of, they've started spreading their announcements out a little bit. They've also announced so much stuff here that people kind of, are kind of numb to it now. But like, there is a real effect of when you announce kind of that these things you're watching aren't really going to have any stakes going forward. It does hurt what people want. Also, Ezra Miller bombed the Flash himself by, doing the weird stuff he did. Right. But I think superhero movies having probably the worst year since Iron Man 1 is, I don't know. So do you think that's something to worry about going forward? The fact that we've seen this is probably the worst year for superhero movies since Iron Man 1.
I think it's
2010.
Yeah, I don't think like superhero movies as a whole, just like video game movies, I wouldn't write a video game movie off completely just like I would in a superhero movie. I think the issue is, number one, we're in a transition for DC. I think that has a huge impact on what's going on there. And I mean, guess what? Deadpool 3 is coming out. I'll tell y'all now, spoiler alert, I'm picking that movie for my draft, right? Because I think it's going to pop back up. And I think it's more so about what they're making and where they are in the MCU and how much content they're pushing out. I think by the time we get one Marvel movie next year, people are going to be way more thrilled to go see something like that. So again, I think it's all about pacing yourself a little bit. Like you can't write off an entire genre. I don't think you could just say superhero movies are dead. I think it's the approach.
People were saying that. That's why I was kind of saying, making that framing it like that.
Yeah.
It becomes a question of like quality over quantity. I think with Marvel, like we all remember, 2020, the world shuts down and there's no Marvel content. Like for the first time since like 2009, we didn't get like any content from Marvel in 2020. And then 2021, they're straight out the gate. It's just like back to back to back. It's like WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Black Widow, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and then Eternals, which is not a real movie. Spider-Man No Way Home, and like so it's like you get like all this content at once. Guys, we can have a separate live stream without Khalil maybe next time. Maybe.
Michael, you gotta stand up for Eternals right now.
Literally anybody else to host Fantasy Movie League 2024. We're accepting applicants. Just
I feel some hate toward me right now. I don't know if I appreciate this, Morgan.
Okay,
again,
point is,
you named a lot of things I liked.
2021, we got like a ton of content, and then it's like they've kind of, and I feel like I've talked about this, like they've oversaturated the marketplace a bit. So hearing that we only get one film from Marvel in 2024, honestly, I'm fine with that. And at the same time, like they've been pushing up their production. And they've been not giving the VFX teams like adequate amount of like rest. That's why we had a whole let's not forget, we had a whole like SAG-AFTRA and WGA strike this summer. All right, Hollywood was shut down for like 4 months,
which hurt the Marvels too.
Right. So I mean, it just becomes a question of, again, quality over quantity, and like you were saying, Khalil, not announcing everything, like, oh, this movie's coming out like 10 years from now, and so the movie that comes out this year is like not gonna matter in like 2-3 years down the line. So I mean, yeah, that's in terms of Marvel, it's like, I guess 2024, this will be a year for folks to kind of catch up on all the Marvel content that they've put out. Phase 4 is come and gone, and now we're in phase 5, and so I think with DC, there's the fact that we know that the DC universe is coming in 2025 with Superman Legacy. So I think that kind of deterred folks away from the box office a bit. And this was pre-writer strike. And then the writer strike happened, so we can't really promote Blue Beetle or Aquaman. And then those movies come out.
I forgot Blue Beetle came out this year.
It's like, I liked Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I was glad to go, see that in Guam. Despite the outside controversy that it had, controversies plural. But yeah, I think it's just the fact that there's like studio politics going on that then affects the movie's box office performance. And at the same time, I don't really blame any one person for it. I mean, Hollywood was shut down, and DC decided to do a whole transition from whoever was in charge to now James Gunn and Peter Safran. So although Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was a good movie, I liked it, and it was kind of a cliffhanger ending. I don't know where they're going forward with that, though, because I think even right. It's like, I mean, Jason Momoa said he's ready to play like Lobo or something. So it's like,
that's why that that mid-credits scene was a joke rather than like a cliffhanger kind of thing. But I would agree with you. I completely agree with you, Morgan. Just quantity over quality, and you got to look at last year as well. I think Flash and both Aquaman was supposed to release last year, and then they got delayed pretty much almost a whole year. So I guarantee you that hurt them quite a bit. And then the fact that Aquaman didn't have marketing until literally after Halloween, like
they lost the movie. I don't know if you remember that. Did you hear about that?
I think so.
They Warner Bros. Lost the movie in their servers. They couldn't find it for like 3 months. They had to keep pushing the trailer back because they couldn't cut a trailer because they didn't have the actual movie. They lost it in their servers for like 3 months.
I did not hear that. No.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It just shows you how stable and how competent they are as an organization.
I was gonna say there's one person or individuals we can blame, Morgan, and that is the studios for taking so long for the strike. Pay your damn actors. Pay the writers. Like they're hurting the most, which is good. I think they did well deserved. It just was.
It just sucks for the actors, and it sucks for the people who worked on those movies to be, kind of get screwed over because the studios are greedy and they couldn't. And by the way, again, and I've talked about this infinite amount of times during the actual strike, but like, the amount of money that they were asking for was basically nothing compared to what they make for these studios. And so it really should have been a very easy decision, but it wasn't for obviously because of greed. But
for something that happened, so like it's just a terrible thing that kind of happened. The studios still box office did not really dip a whole lot. Yes, we're starting to see that more towards the end of the year, but during the time, no one was boycotting. Unfortunately, I mean, Barbie still made $1 billion, and that was right at the beginning of it. So I think there's definitely a lesson to learn, but I think moving forward with 2024, I look at the movie slate and it's like nothing compared to what 2023 was, and I think this is going to be a year that hurts for sure.
So what I will say, and I don't know if you guys know this, and I had an argument with someone about this actually a few weeks ago, or maybe it was more than that, like a month ago at this point. But this year for box office was one of the worst we've seen in almost over a decade. So this is the amount so we had $2 billion movies, which is one of the lowest amount of $1 billion movies since I think 2013 or 2012 or something like that. So it's been a long time since we have a box office year this bad, right? Again, I'm kind of discounting any year which there was an active pandemic going on for obvious reasons, which the 2 years or whenever the pandemic started until now, I discount all those years. But then outside of that, this is not a normal box office. We're not back at the last few years box office levels. So before, again, pre-COVID few years, I've just kind of blocked those years out, right? So do you think that's going to be something that's going to hurt box office going forward? Again, I truly believe in 2019 and 2018, Mission Impossible, Fast and Furious would have both made $1 billion. I think the Transformers movie which came out, which again, I think we've not mentioned once, and it was a Transformers movie used to be guaranteed, money makers even overseas, right? Everything Marvel released would at least make $600 million or more, right? Like $600 million was a floor for Marvel, right? You were seeing these things where, you were just getting you were getting almost a ridiculous amount of movies, which would just hit $1 billion, right? It was becoming a normal thing for movies to hit $1 billion. That's not the case anymore. Now hitting $1 billion is a very rare thing. 2 movies did it. Do you think that's something that we're going to see?
I was going to say, some might argue the reason why Barbie did so well is because it was something different. I mean, it wasn't a franchise movie. It was something, some would say, original. Now they're calling it an adapted screenplay, I think, for the Oscar
it
nominations.
Is adapted.
But yeah,
they call Marvel stuff adapted, so it's adapted.
Yeah. So I was definitely say it's just something different. It's not a franchise movie. It's not a Marvel movie. It's not a superhero movie. It's genuine, and it felt real.
Okay, that again, I don't want to make this an attack Barbie thing, but I think that again, I truly do believe that because of the way the box office kind of looked and looks this year, again, I don't know if it would have been, it would have been very successful. I don't know if it would have made $1 billion without kind of the fact that it did go viral marketing wise.
And the reason I only say that is because all of the, Marvel, like you said, guaranteed 600 million. I mean, I thought for sure Guardians was going to make $1 billion, and that didn't happen. Oppenheimer, 3-hour movie.
My picks were all based on the fact that Marvel was going to hit their floor every single time, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Almost made $1 billion with that as well. So I think, again, it's just something. All these movies that earned so much money this year was just something different, and I think what audiences were really striving for over the last 8-9 years.
But I think the one thing I would disagree with, I think had Barbie done this in 2018, right, with all the other movies, I don't think anyone would have batted an eye. I think the fact that it is now one of the 2 movies to make $1 billion this year, I think that's what's making it a little bit more interesting, right? Because I think we're looking at a year which, again, when you look at a number like $1 billion, when you go back to 2019, that was nothing, right? That was okay, cool, $1 billion. There was 4 movies in 2018 which made $1 billion, 4 or 5 movies, right? Marvel had $3 billion movies or $2 billion movies in 1 year, right? I don't remember Spider-Man hit $1 billion, it was close, but they had, almost $3 billion movies in a year, right? Wonder Woman made $1 billion. These big $1 billion is not a big deal. Now it is and I think part of that is, some post-COVID shock stuff. but I don't know. Do you think this is going to get better, or do you think it's going to get worse? Because we've got Planet of the Apes next year. We've got, we've got a few other things that I am blanking on everything else. But
More franchise movies.
I think
But
it's
Planet of the
gonna. Yeah. To answer your question, Khalil, I think it's definitely going to get better. I think because if you just look at like the history of Hollywood, the history of the box office, every time that there's like an actor strike or a writer strike, and then there's just like a slew of like original content and like because Hollywood was again shut down for however long. It's like now everyone's just excited to get back in the writer's room and to start filming again. So I feel like there's going to be maybe more original movies. Like I know there's like I was just looking at the lineup like for 2024. I mean, there's Mickey 17, there's a Nosferatu remake coming out. There's like so many other movies that are maybe outside of mainstream, or maybe like outside of mainstream Hollywood and outside of the pop culture powerhouse that is Marvel, and then also Warner Bros. But there's also, I mean, Fall Guy, Argyle, Civil War. So, well, that and like A24, which is an up and coming studio, they were allowed to stay open during the writer's strike. So I think it's just a matter of like, well, pay your actors and make better art.
But do you think people want to watch these movies in theaters? That's my question to you. Because I think the question is not necessarily are they going to make good movies, because good movies come out all the time. The question is, are they going to make movies which people want to watch in theaters, right? Because I think, again, the distinction I'll make for Barbie is they got people to go to theaters, which is something which is not easy to do right now, right? Like getting people to go to a movie theater, pay what is sometimes, frankly, an outrageous fee or like price to go watch a movie once with your family, right? Like if you're looking at the average, family, which is how movie studios base their, projections. That's a very hard thing to do. And the fact that Marvel couldn't do it is a little bit crazy. Now, because I realize we're at an hour now, but I do want to do it. I do want to ask you guys all a question, because I know we talked about the fact that there were movies that did not do as well. Now, was there a movie, or maybe a few movies, which you kind of are now angry that nobody picked, or that you're kind of like, this movie just did so well? There's one in my mind, but I'm like, let's see what you guys have to say about this.
You tell us first. I got to think on this.
Okay, so mine was the Taylor Swift movie. That thing did an insane amount of money. I did not even the week before it released, my own hubris, and again, I don't think it was a movie which again, I'm using the word deserved here, and I don't know what Zach's view on this movie, but I don't think it deserved to make that much money. I think it was very much based on a general level of overhype for something else, and it just so happened to correlate or conflate with the box office, right? And so I think that was a movie which I did not think was going to. I had a hunch, right up to the beginning, like right to when it released, but like I didn't think it was going to do well, and I don't think it deserved to do well.
So here's one. I actually don't know the box office on this, but I remember it blowing up and being like, why was this not on any of our radars? And mainly because like, I guess it got like weird hype, but like The Sound of Freedom, that was one movie that
you call the weird right-wing hype, which is like not something you want to associate yourself with all the time.
But like that's just one of those things that you just can't predict. Yeah. And like hindsight, I didn't know there was a Taylor Swift movie coming out. Did we know that at the time? I have no idea. Like
it was not even something that it wasn't planned to come out until the strike.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's always going to be movies that like are just completely not on our radars and just completely blow up out of nowhere. My biggest thought is like Everything Everywhere All at Once. That movie was bonkers and like in every possible way. And like nobody even really knew it was coming out. Like nobody even knew what it was. So it's just one of those things. There's always going to be stuff like that.
It's funny because that was the movie which kind of, was one of the things I was like, that is the case study for what I want this fantasy movie league to be, which is if somebody through some sheer like, either wisdom or luck picked Everything Everywhere All at Once at the beginning of the year or picked it up, halfway through the year, they were going to be sitting right at the end of the year, right? Like that was the case study for this, which was, if you could find that movie, which always comes out, right, or those few movies that always come out, you're going to be doing you're going to be sitting there happy. Zach, what did I know you have to go soon? So what do you have one?
I want to say something like Megan, but I know we did our draft after I believe that movie came out. But that was
that came out in
something
January.
what would that make, like 200-300 million at the box office? That was kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Maybe FNAF, Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't know if off the top of my head if someone picked that, and I think
No one picked. Well, Morgan picked it up later, but like he didn't. No one picked it at the beginning of the year.
Right. So I honestly, another movie I had no idea was coming out, and I'm sure that's just Blumhouse at its finest right there. Not really knowing a movie's coming out until in 2 weeks it happens. But yeah, I think, I think there's like Michael said, there's just not it's tough to kind of look at it from this point of view. I mean, some of my favorite movies I had no idea came out this year until like only a couple months before their release. So
yeah, which is some of the fun of that. Morgan, did you have one?
I guess for me now, I haven't actually. When I was in Guam, I didn't actually go see Napoleon or Ferrari, but I've heard great things about it. And actually, one of my colleagues saw. Actually, one of my colleagues saw Ferrari when we were out there. But I guess Napoleon, Ferrari. I didn't pick Wonka. I heard a lot of good things about Wonka. You know, Timothée Chalamet. I had heard about Wonka. I think like as early as like January, February, like when we had done the draft, but I just decided not to pick it because I just had still a bad taste in my mouth after Johnny Depp. But I guess maybe those three, like surprise. I guess apparently those movies were good. Those three: Ferrari, Napoleon, and Wonka.
Wonka was kind of a surprise for me, and I think I just looked at it, it's almost at 500 million. So, I mean, I like that movie way more than what I was anticipating it, and it's a little bit different than what Khalil had mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, Color Purple, which I found out about like only a few months, like a month or so before it came out, but I ended up picking that, so I can't really.
What is Are we anticipating like a next year draft? Because I'm looking at this year draft. I'm looking at this year's movies, and it's a rough one. I'm very curious to know if we're going to even have enough to fill 25.
Well, we will. I've created the list of movies, and it's actually when you get into like the nitty gritty, you're like you look at some of these movies, and you're like there are like 40 movies here, which could literally all just be massive. And you're just kind of like looking at it. And also I do have a hunch. And so there's going to be a better process for like, you know, picking up movies and dropping movies mid-year.
Are we going to, are we still going to utilize like the actors? I think that was something that played a part last year, and award season being rough.
So award season is getting pretty much removed, or is getting removed. The actors are going to be there. The actors actually were some of the tiebreakers. Actually, were the actors for like some of the, especially between you and Morgan. The actors one did end up mattering a little bit. So you know, again, the actors wasn't meant to be substantial. It was meant to just be a little bit. Now there will be a little bit more about because like the actors, the way it was now is it just basically like. How many movies did they show up in? Now there's gonna be a little bit more about box office in that. Also, there's now a formula for streaming, which there wasn't before, but only for Netflix streaming because we don't have numbers for Disney streaming or any other streaming service streaming. So only some movies can be included for streaming, which is only Netflix stuff because it's the only thing we have an actual metric for. But and then also the home video numbers don't come out to like a year, so we're gonna have to cut that stuff out too. But I've made all those amendments to the formula, so we will be doing a draft for next year. I don't know. Are you guys interested in doing it next year or this year? I guess.
Yeah. I'm still in. I already got my picks written down.
Okay, perfect. Michael out here trying to repeat back-to-back champion.
Yeah, I gotta hold that title.
It might be worth maybe introducing like kind of all of us giving a rating for a movie if we've seen it, and then seeing if that has a potential to play. Let's say all of us rate a movie that has 4 out of 5 stars, and then whoever's list is it on, like then it adds a little bit more weight, or even maybe nothing big, but like at least something to make it.
You just do like a 10-point bump if everyone loves it.
10 to 50.
The only problem is then are people going to start hating movies because there's an impact on that. That's my only thing is like, because I will absolutely hate every other person picks
I was going to say, I think the only one we'd have to worry about is you. So
I'm absolutely petty enough to do
slippery slope,
that. I will absolutely hate on every single movie you guys pick in order to just to make sure you don't get that. But no,
I'll put up with the hate,
that's-
so because I know it's gonna pay off at the end of the year when I clown on you.
I'm gonna beat you this year, Michael. Don't worry.
Bring it
I'm
on,
gonna have a
baby.
few more people in. It's gonna be good. But I will get you guys the
Alright.
details for that stuff. We will do the draft.
Sure. Looking forward to it.
Probably I want to get it done before Madam Web comes out, for no reason at all. But that is
I was
the
gonna say-
benchmark I'm using for again, no reason whatsoever.
Definitely want to do it sooner than later because the later we do it, the less movies we can pick. So
Yeah, no, it'll be done before. It'll be everything is set up now. So again, the draft. I'm just going to literally create a new group chat with the new people who I've recruited, and we will find a date for the draft. So we were basically ready to go because the formula now is done because of this year. So yeah. Anyways, with that being said, I know everyone has to go. So thank you all so much for coming. And
Yes.
it was a great year. Michael won. It was, a hard year for me. And I will be back next year, and I will be wearing the crown. And if I win, then maybe there'll be a real crown. Who knows? I don't know. I was thinking about it this year, and then the logistics of that felt too much. Also, I wasn't going to be the one wearing it, so I was like,
Yeah.
I did
That's
think about
fun.
I did think about a crown or a trophy of some sort, but that's probably an innovation for this year, depending on. So we'll see. Anyways, thank you all, and thank you everyone for watching our. I'm gonna get so much hate. I'm gonna intentionally clip all the Barbie stuff, and I'm gonna get so much hate for it. It's gonna be great.
This is how I know your Marvel's take is just wrong because you intentionally try to make
Right.
people upset.
I mean, that me calling the Marvels the greatest Marvel movie ever made got over 1,000 views on YouTube, and
It
so
is.
many people call me a beta male. I'm so happy. It's I was telling Morgan this. Every comment that is you're a beta male. You're a beta. I'm like, okay, cool. I
how are
literally
people
do not care.
believing that? That's what I want to know.
And then I was like attacking Matt Walsh and some other like right wingers who were saying stuff about the Marvels, and those will go even better. Apparently, it's really easy to bait them into watching it and then commenting on videos. So, like those the Marvels review and then that Matt Walsh reaction thing are the two most disliked videos on my channel by far.
You got to put all this energy into like genuine opinions and something that you're worth
I'm just
believing
becoming a take
for,
person.
and then
I'm just becoming a
maybe
take
it'll
person.
start to take off. Oh my!
Yes.
All right.
I'm just becoming a take person now. I'm just giving takes and I'm just seeing what sticks.
All right.
I'm just doing what they do with sports. I'm just giving a bunch of random takes to make, arguments for the sake of it. And I'm willing to live with the hate because I don't really care that much. So I think that's kind of where I'm going to settle, But yeah,
You do
anyways,
you.
with that being said, on that happy note, I'll see you guys all soon. Hopefully.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.